They called it the final solution, a chilling phrase that masked one of the darkest plans in human history. Not a battle strategy, not a political maneuver, but a systematic blueprint for execution. Millions were marked for death, not because of what they had done, but for who they were. Jews, Roma, disabled, and countless others, condemned to disappear. This was not chaos. It was cold, calculated hardship, industrial-scale persecution executed with ruthless precision. How did a modern society plan and carry out mass execution? Who designed the machinery of this plan? And how did millions become complicit, willingly or by fear? This documentary is for educational purposes and analyzes historical facts from a neutral perspective. We are strongly against violence and war in all its forms. This is the final solution story. The machinery was vast: railroads, bureaucracies, camps, and facilities. Each element played a role. Each decision was logged, budgeted, and executed. This is the story of the final solution, the Nazi plan to eradicate Europe's Jews and others deemed undesirable. It claimed over 6 million lives, shattered communities, and left a scar on humanity's conscience. From the ghettos of Poland to the facilities of Auschwitz, from the desks of bureaucrats to the hands of those carrying out orders, we will trace the path of this plan, its origins, its mechanisms, and its human cost. Through the voices of survivors and the evidence left behind, we uncover a truth that must never be forgotten. Join us as we confront one of history's greatest atrocities, a testament to both the depths of evil and the resilience of those who endured. The final solution did not emerge in a vacuum. Its roots lie in centuries of antisemitism, woven into Europe's social and cultural fabric. Jews had long been scapegoats for economic woes, plagues, and political unrest. Historical prejudices dated back to the Middle Ages, with blood libels accusing Jews of ritual murder and expulsions from countries like England in 1290 and Spain in 1492. These events created a legacy of exclusion, where Jews were often confined to specific professions or neighborhoods, fostering resentment and stereotypes. For instance, in medieval England, Jews were forced into moneylending after being barred from other trades, which only amplified accusations of usury during economic downturns. In Spain, the Inquisition under Ferdinand and Isabella targeted conversos, Jews who had converted to Christianity but were suspected of secretly practicing their faith, leading to torture, executions, and mass expulsions that scattered communities across Europe and beyond. But in the 19th century, pseudo-scientific racial theories gave this hatred a new edge. Influenced by thinkers like Arthur de Gobineau, who promoted racial hierarchies in his 1853 essay, An Essay on the Inequality of the Human Races, Jews were cast as a biological threat, an inferior race, undermining Aryan superiority. Social Darwinism twisted evolutionary ideas to justify discrimination, portraying Jews as parasites, weakening society. This wasn't just academic musing. It seeped into popular culture through books, lectures, and even school curricula in some regions. In Germany, this ideology gained traction after World War I. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919 with its harsh reparations and territorial losses, left the nation humiliated. Hyperinflation in the 1920s wiped out savings, with prices skyrocketing so fast that workers were paid twice a day to buy bread before values plummeted further. The Great Depression, starting in 1929, brought unemployment to over 6 million, creating fertile ground for extremist voices. Into this void stepped Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party, who made anti-Semitism the cornerstone of their vision for a new Germany. Hitler's Mein Kampf, published in 2 volumes in 1925 and 1926, outlined his virulent anti-Jewish views, blaming Jews for Germany's defeat in World War I through the infamous stab-in-the-back myth and economic ills. He described Jews as a racial tuberculosis that needed to be eradicated for the health of the nation. When Hitler became Chancellor in 1933, the Nazis moved swiftly. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935 stripped Jews of citizenship, banned intermarriage, and barred them from public life. These laws defined Jewishness by ancestry, not religion, marking even converts or those with partial Jewish heritage as targets. Specifically, anyone with 3 or 4 Jewish grandparents was classified as a full Jew, while those with 1 or 2 were Mischlinge, or mixed blood, facing varying degrees of discrimination. Propaganda saturated society. Posters, films like The Eternal Jew, released in 1940, and radio broadcasts branded Jews as vermin, a danger to the nation. "The Jew is our misfortune," declared the Nazi newspaper Der Stürmer, edited by Julius Streicher, which featured grotesque caricatures weekly, often depicting Jews as hook-nosed predators preying on innocent Germans. Children were taught to see Jews as enemies, their textbooks filled with caricatures and lessons on racial purity, such as math problems calculating the cost of Jewish parasitism on the economy. This was no mere prejudice. It was a deliberate campaign to dehumanize, setting the stage for execution. In the early years, the Nazi goal was expulsion, not extermination. Jews were pressured to emigrate through economic exclusion and violence, such as the 1933 boycott of Jewish businesses, where SA stormtroopers painted Stars of David on shop windows and intimidated customers with signs reading "Germans, defend yourselves, don't buy from Jews." The 1938 Kristallnacht, a state-orchestrated pogrom triggered by the assassination of German diplomat Ernst von Rath by Herschel Grinchpan, a young Polish Jew avenging his family's deportation, saw over 1,000 synagogues damaged or destroyed, many by fire, 7,500 businesses destroyed, and 30,000 Jews arrested and sent to concentration camps like Dachau and Buchenwald. The violence unfolded over November 9th to 10th, with shards of broken glass littering the streets, hence the name Night of Broken Glass, and the government fining the Jewish community 1 billion Reichsmarks for the damages they themselves caused. Many fled, but the world's doors were closing. The 1938 Evian Conference, where 32 nations discussed the Jewish refugee crisis at a lakeside resort in France, ended with most countries refusing to accept significant numbers, citing economic concerns and immigration quotas. Australia's delegate famously said, "As we have no real racial problem, we are not desirous of importing one." The US, for instance, turned away the MS St. Louis ship carrying 937 Jewish refugees in 1939, forcing it back to Europe, where many later perished in camps like Auschwitz and Sobibor. By 1939, Germany's invasion of Poland brought millions more Jews under Nazi control. Immigration was no longer viable. The Nazis needed a new approach. In 1940, ideas of mass deportation surfaced. Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, proposed sending Jews to Madagascar, a distant island under consideration as a dumping ground after France's defeat in June 1940. The plan, drafted by Franz Rademacher of the Foreign Ministry, envisioned shipping 4 million Jews there in a phased operation. But the war's demands, resources, ships, and control of the seas, especially after Britain's continued resistance, made this plan unfeasible. The turning point came in June 1941 with Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. As Nazi armies advanced, Einsatzgruppen, mobile squads, followed, executing entire Jewish communities. These units, comprising SS, police, and local auxiliaries, operated in the rear areas, carrying out mass shootings. At Babi Yar, Near Kiev, 33,771 Jews were executed in 2 days in September 1941, their bodies dumped in a ravine after being stripped and machine-gunned in groups. Similar massacres occurred in Odessa, where over 50,000 were killed in October 1941 by Romanian and German forces. Many burned alive in warehouses or shot at the harbor, and in Lithuania's Kovno ghetto, where 10,000 were murdered in a single great action in October 1941. These actions were brutal but inefficient, and the psychological toll on the participants prompted the Nazis to seek a more systematic method. Reports from Einsatzgruppen leaders like Otto Ohlendorf of Einsatzgruppe D noted soldiers suffering from nervous breakdowns due to the close-range killings, with some units resorting to alcohol to numb the horror. The stage was set for the final solution, a policy that would transform hatred into industrialized execution. The final solution was not a sudden decision, but a chilling evolution of Nazi policy. In the early 1930s, the Nazis focused on marginalizing Jews through legal and social exclusion. The Nuremberg Laws and Kristallnacht were designed to make life unlivable, pushing Jews to leave Germany. But as the war expanded, so did Nazi ambitions. The conquest of Poland in 1939 brought 3 million Jews under German control, overwhelming earlier plans for emigration. The Nazis began experimenting with new methods of control, establishing ghettos to isolate Jewish communities and exploit their labor. These ghettos were sealed off with walls or fences, turning urban areas into open-air prisons. By 1941, the invasion of the Soviet Union escalated the actions. Einsatzgruppen, organized into 4 units with thousands of men, followed the Wehrmacht, executing Jews, communists, and others deemed undesirable. Mass actions like Babi Yar and Ponari, where over 100,000 were executed near Vilnius between 1941 and 1944 by Lithuanian collaborators under Nazi supervision, revealed the scale of Nazi intent. But shooting was labor-intensive and public, drawing attention from local populations and sometimes inciting unrest. SS officers reported morale issues among their men, who struggled with the psychological burden of mass executions, including alcoholism and suicides. Himmler, observing an execution in Minsk in August 1941, was visibly shaken by the gore, splattering blood and brain matter, and ordered a more humane method for the perpetrators, not the victims. This led to experiments with gas vans, mobile units that piped carbon monoxide from truck exhaust into sealed compartments, first tested in Chelmno in late 1941. These vans could kill up to 100 people at a time but were unreliable, often breaking down or leaking gas, and still required handling of bodies, which were buried in mass graves or later incinerated. The transition to industrialized execution was deliberate. In late 1941, Rudolf Höss, commandant of Auschwitz, learned of Zyklon B, a pesticide used for delousing produced by Degesch, a subsidiary of IG Farben. If it can kill lice, it can kill humans, he reasoned. The first gassing experiment in Auschwitz's Block 11 in September 1941, using Soviet prisoners and sick Poles, proved the method's efficiency, killing 850 in one session with minimal mess. By early 1942, the Nazis were ready to scale up, turning camps into extermination centers with dedicated rail spurs and multiple chambers. A pivotal moment came on January 20th, 1942, at the Wannsee Conference in Berlin. Chaired by Reinhard Heydrich, Himmler's deputy, this meeting of 15 high-ranking Nazi officials, including representatives from the Foreign Office, Justice Ministry, and General Government, formalized the final solution. The protocol, drafted by Adolf Eichmann, outlined the coordination of deportation and execution across Europe, estimating 11 million Jews targeted from countries like the UK if invaded. It emphasized secrecy, using euphemisms like evacuation to the east, and integrated various government agencies into the process, assigning roles such as census taking to the Interior Ministry and labor allocation to the Economy Ministry. This conference marked the shift from sporadic killings to a continent-wide bureaucratic genocide, lasting just 90 minutes, but sealing the fate of millions. Before the extermination camps, ghettos served as a critical step in the final solution. Established in occupied Poland and Eastern Europe, ghettos like Warsaw, Łódź, Krakow, Vilnius, and Minsk confined Jews in overcrowded, unsanitary conditions. The Warsaw Ghetto, the largest, held 400,000 people in a 3.4 square kilometer area, with density reaching 200,000 per square kilometer. Imagine entire families squeezed into single rooms, sharing beds in shifts. The Vilnius Ghetto, established in September 1941, housed 40,000 in a historic Jewish quarter, but saw 20,000 killed in nearby Ponary ravines before its liquidation in 1943. "We were starving, but the worst was the fear," recalled Marek Edelman, a Warsaw Ghetto survivor and leader of the Jewish Fighting Organization. "Every day, we heard of deportations. We knew resettlement was a lie." Ghettos were not just prisons, but tools of attrition. The Nazis deliberately starved residents with daily rations as low as 184 calories in Warsaw, far below the 2,000 needed for survival, leading to widespread deaths from hunger-related diseases like kwashiorkor. Typhus and tuberculosis spread, killing tens of thousands, exacerbated by lack of medicine, clean water, and sanitation. In Łódź, for instance, over 20,000 died from starvation and disease alone. Jewish councils, or Judenräte, were forced to administer the ghettos, a cruel manipulation that pitted Jews against each other. Leaders like Adam Czerniaków in Warsaw faced impossible choices, organizing deportations under Nazi threats to save some lives at the expense of others. Czerniaków took his own life in July 1942, unable to bear the guilt of sending children away during the Great Deportation, which saw 265,000 Warsaw Jews sent to Treblinka in cattle cars. Deportations from ghettos to extermination camps began in earnest in 1942. Trains left daily, carrying thousands to their fate. "They told us we were going to work," said Helena Birnbaum, a Warsaw Ghetto survivor. "But we saw the trains return empty. We knew." The ghettos were a prelude to the camps, softening resistance through starvation and despair while concentrating Jews for the next phase of the final solution. In Łódź Ghetto, under Chaim Rumkowski's leadership, the Judenrat emphasized labor as a means of survival, producing goods for the German war effort like uniforms and munitions in over 100 factories. Rumkowski's controversial speech in September 1942, begging parents to hand over children for deportation to "give me your children," he said, to save the ghetto, delayed but did not prevent deportations, with over 70,000 sent to Chełmno and Auschwitz. Cultural life persisted defiantly in ghettos, with secret schools teaching children, underground newspapers like Oyneg Shabs in Warsaw archiving daily life, and artists creating works to document the horror. These efforts, led by figures like Emanuel Ringelblum, who assembled a team of historians and writers, ensured that evidence of the suffering would survive, buried in milk cans and metal boxes that were discovered after the war in 1946. In the Krakow ghetto, Oskar Schindler's list saved 1,200 workers from deportation by claiming them as essential for his enamelware plant. A story later popularized, but rooted in real acts of subversion against the system. The heart of the final solution was its extermination camps: Treblinka, Sobibor, Belzec, Chełmno, Majdanek, and Auschwitz-Birkenau. Unlike concentration camps, which used prisoners for labor, these were designed solely for execution. Located in occupied Poland, they were strategically placed near rail lines and Jewish populations to maximize efficiency and minimize transport costs. Treblinka, for example, was only 100 kilometers from Warsaw. Auschwitz-Birkenau was the largest, killing over 1.1 million people, including 960,000 Jews. Trains arrived daily, packed with Jews from across Europe, Hungary, France, Greece, and beyond. We were crammed like cattle, 80 to 100 in a wagon, recalled Elie Wiesel in his memoir. Night, no food, no water, just a bucket for waste. People died standing up, pressed against us. On arrival, SS officers conducted selections on the Judenrampe, deciding in seconds who would live and who would die. The elderly, children under 14, pregnant women, and the weak were sent to gas chambers disguised as showers, with signs reading disinfection to maintain calm and prevent uprisings. Zyklon B pellets dropped through vents released hydrogen cyanide gas, killing thousands in 10 to 20 minutes amid choking and panic. Remains were burned in crematoria or open pits, with ashes scattered or used as fertilizer on nearby farms. The process was so streamlined that a trainload of 2,000 could be processed in hours, with valuables like gold teeth extracted for the Reich's coffers. The Nazis melted down fillings to produce gold bars stamped with the eagle and swastika. Treblinka was even more lethal in its brevity. Operating from July 1942 to October 1943, it killed up to 900,000 people, mostly from Warsaw. The ground trembled with screams, said Samuel Willenberg, a survivor who worked sorting victims' belongings. The gas chambers used engine exhaust, slower but relentless. Families held hands, then vanished. Treblinka's small size, only 600 by 400 meters, and rapid turnover left few survivors, but its efficiency was staggering, killing more per day than any other camp, with up to 15,000 processed daily at peak. Sobibor and Belzec followed similar models, each designed to execute quickly and erase evidence, with bodies initially buried, then exhumed and burned to hide crimes as the war turned. In Belzec, over 600,000 were killed in 1942 alone, using carbon monoxide from diesel engines. Chelmno pioneered gas vans, operating from December 1941, and killing 150,000, mainly from Łódź, with victims unloaded in a castle ruin and gassed en route to forest graves. Majdanek combined labor and extermination, killing 78,000 with gas chambers and shootings, including non-Jewish Poles and Soviets. Together, these camps killed millions with industrial precision, their operations concealed under the code name Action Reinhard, honoring the assassinated Heinrich and looting valuables worth 178 million Reichsmarks. The final solution required a vast logistical network. Adolf Eichmann, the architect of deportation, coordinated the transport of millions from his office in the RSHA, Reich Security Main Office. Trains were requisitioned from national railways like Deutsche Reichsbahn, schedules meticulously planned to avoid disrupting military operations, with priority given to deportation over troop movements at times. The trains ran like clockwork, Eichmann boasted at his 1961 trial in Jerusalem. I ensured every detail was perfect. Jewish communities were forced to pay for their own deportation, a cruel irony that funded their execution through special accounts seized from victims, including bank funds and property sales. Collaboration was key. In occupied countries, local authorities and collaborators rounded up Jews. In France, the Vichy government under Philippe Pétain handed over 75,000 Jews, including 11,000 children, during the Veldiv roundup in July 1942, where Paris police arrested families in a cycling stadium before deportation to Drancy and then Auschwitz. In Hungary, after German occupation in March 1944, 437,000 were deported to Auschwitz in just 8 weeks under Eichmann's direction, with Hungarian gendarmes assisting in brutal efficiency, drives that saw daily transports of 12,000. Ghettos served as holding pens, where starvation and disease killed thousands before deportation. The ghetto was a prison of despair, said Helena Birnbaum. We were skeletons waiting for the trains. The SS exploited Jewish labor to sustain the execution process. Sonderkommando units composed of Jewish prisoners were forced to handle bodies, clean gas chambers, and operate crematoria. We were dead men walking, said Philipp Müller, an Auschwitz Sonderkommando. Every day I saw my people vanish into smoke, and I had to help. These prisoners faced an impossible moral dilemma, coerced into complicity to survive a few more weeks, with units periodically executed to eliminate witnesses, typically every 3 to 4 months. The Euthanasia program, T4, served as a precursor, killing 70,000 disabled Germans with gas chambers from 1939 to 1941 at sites like Hartheim and Sonnenstein, providing expertise and personnel like Christian Wirth, who designed Belzec's facilities after honing techniques on mental patients. This program expanded to include undesirables in camps, blending eugenics with racial policy, and was halted due to public protests from figures like Bishop Clemens von Galen in 1941, but its methods were transferred to the East. Despite the overwhelming terror, resistance emerged in ghettos and camps. In the Warsaw Ghetto, the 1943 uprising saw Jewish fighters, armed with smuggled weapons and Molotov cocktails, hold off Nazi forces for nearly a month. Organized by the GOB, Jewish Fighting Organization, and JZW, Jewish Military Union, the revolt began on April 19th, coinciding with Passover, and involved 750 fighters against 2,000 SS troops equipped with tanks and artillery. We fought not to win, but to die on our terms, said Marek Edelman, a leader of the uprising. We wanted the world to know we resisted. The revolt delayed deportations, but ended in the ghetto's destruction, with 13,000 Jews killed and 50,000 deported to Treblinka, as the Nazis razed buildings block by block. Similar uprisings occurred in other ghettos, like Bialystok in August 1943. Where 300 fighters battled for 5 days before being overwhelmed, or in Vilnius, where the FPO, United Partisan Organization, smuggled members to forests to join partisans. In the camps, resistance was rarer but no less heroic. At Treblinka, prisoners staged a revolt on August 2, 1943, using stolen keys to access weapons, burning parts of the camp and allowing around 300 to escape, though only 70 survived the war, including Samuel Willenberg, who joined the Polish Home Army. Sobibor saw a similar uprising on October 14, 1943, led by Alexander Pechersky, a Soviet POW, and Leon Feldhendler. They killed 11 SS officers with axes and knives in a coordinated plan, enabling 300 prisoners to escape through minefields, though most were later recaptured or killed. The camp was dismantled afterward to erase traces. At Auschwitz, the Sonderkommando revolted on October 7, 1944, destroying Crematorium 4 with smuggled explosives from female munitions workers like Rosa Robota. All 450 participants were killed, but their defiance left a key facility in ruins. We knew we'd die, wrote Salman Gradowski, a Sonderkommando who buried his notes before the revolt. But we wanted to strike back. Smaller acts of resistance, smuggling food, sharing information, or preserving cultural traditions, sustained hope. In ghettos, underground schools and theaters defied Nazi attempts to erase Jewish identity. We sang, we prayed, we remembered who we were, recalled a Łódź ghetto survivor. These acts, though less visible, were vital to maintaining humanity in the face of dehumanization. partisan groups in forests like the Bielski brothers who saved 1,200 Jews in Belarus by building a self-sustaining camp with schools and synagogues, conducted sabotage and rescues, attacking supply lines and harboring escapees. While networks like the Oneg Shabbat archive in Warsaw documented atrocities for future generations, collecting over 35,000 pages of testimony that informed post-war trials. The final solution claimed over 6 million Jewish lives, alongside millions of Romani, disabled people, political dissidents, and others. But numbers alone cannot capture the human toll. Survivor testimonies reveal the personal devastation, resilience, and loss that defined this tragedy. Auschwitz survivor Elie Wiesel was 15 when he arrived at Auschwitz in 1944 from Sighet, Romania. The SS officer's baton pointed left or right, he wrote in night. Right meant execution. My mother and sister went that way. I went left with my father, but I lost him to the camp's cruelty during a brutal selection. That moment broke something in me. I questioned God, humanity, everything. Wiesel's survival through labor and a death march in January 1945, marching 42 miles in snow to Gleiwitz, was miraculous, but the loss of his family haunted him. Auschwitz is a wound that never closes, he later said in speeches. Warsaw Ghetto and Majdanek survivor Halina Birnbaum was 13 when confined to the Warsaw Ghetto. Hunger was our constant companion, she recalled. But the deportations were worse. My mother was taken to Treblinka. Her last look was one of terror. In Majdanek, I hid my age to survive, working in the sorting barracks, but the gas chambers were always there, a shadow over every day. Birnbaum's story reflects the constant fear and the strength needed to endure, as she later escaped during a transfer to Auschwitz and hid until liberation by the Soviets in 1945. Samuel Willenberg escaped Treblinka during a revolt in August 1943. I worked in the camp, sorting the belongings of the executed, he wrote in his memoir. I saw families march to the gas chambers, clutching each other. When we rebelled, I ran through gunfire, carrying their stories. The smell of decay never leaves me. Willenberg's account highlights the rare moments of resistance amid overwhelming hardship, and he later returned to Poland to testify against guards at trials and sculpt memorials. Primo Levi, an Italian chemist, survived Auschwitz through work at Monowitz, a subcamp producing synthetic rubber for IG Farben. They took our names, our hair, our dignity, he wrote in If This Is a Man. We were numbers, not people. Yet I saw sparks of humanity, a shared piece of bread, a whispered encouragement. Those moments kept me alive. Levi's testimony captures the dehumanization and the small acts of kindness that defied it, though he struggled with survivors' guilt for decades, leading to his tragic suicide in 1987. Warsaw Ghetto survivor Władka Mead, a courier for the Warsaw Ghetto resistance, smuggled weapons and information across the walls. I passed as a non-Jew, sneaking guns to the fighters, she recalled. Every step was a risk. I saw children starving, families torn apart, but we fought to show we were not helpless. Mead's story highlights the courage of those who resisted outside the camps, bridging the ghetto and the outside world, and she later helped establish Holocaust education in the US through the Jewish Labor Committee. Auschwitz Sonderkommando Philipp Müller, forced into the Auschwitz Sonderkommando, witnessed the gas chamber's horror. I carried remains to the ovens, knowing my turn would come, he wrote in Eyewitness Auschwitz. One day, a woman whispered, "Tell the world." That gave me purpose. I survived to speak for those who couldn't. Müller's account reveals the unbearable burden of the Sonderkommando and their resolve to bear witness as he testified at the Frankfurt Auschwitz trials in the 1960s, helping convict 22 SS officers. Additional testimonies like that of Rudolf Höss, who escaped Auschwitz in April 1944 with Alfred Wetzler to report on the gas chambers in the Wetzler report. which reached Allied leaders and saved lives by pressuring Hungary to halt deportations temporarily. Or Anne Frank, whose diary from hiding in Amsterdam humanizes the fear of discovery before her death in Bergen-Belsen, underscore the diverse ways individuals coped and remembered. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist at Auschwitz, found meaning in suffering through logotherapy, writing Man's Search for Meaning about observing purpose even in despair. These voices, among countless others, remind us that the final solution was not just a policy, but a lived nightmare. Families were shattered, communities erased, and survivors left to grapple with unimaginable trauma. Yet their stories also reveal courage, resistance, and the will to bear witness. The final solution was executed not by monsters, but by ordinary people, bureaucrats, soldiers, and civilians who embraced or acquiesced to Nazi ideology. Adolf Eichmann, a mid-level SS officer, epitomized this banality of evil. "I was just following orders," he claimed at his 1961 trial in Jerusalem, a defense that rang hollow against the scale of his actions, organizing deportations from Hungary alone, where he personally oversaw the loading of trains. Rudolf Höss, Auschwitz commandant, described his role with chilling detachment. "I ensured the machinery ran smoothly. It was my duty." Höss's confession, given before his execution in 1947 at Auschwitz, revealed a man who saw execution as a logistical challenge, not a moral one, admitting to overseeing 2.5 million deaths, though modern estimates suggest around 1.1 million based on transport records. Doctors like Joseph Mengele turned science into horror, conducting experiments on prisoners to advance Nazi racial theories. He smiled at us, gave us candy, then injected us with poisons, recalled a twin survivor from Auschwitz, Eva Moses Kor, who endured surgeries without anesthesia alongside her sister Miriam. Mengele's fascination with twins led to horrific procedures, often resulting in death, as he sought to unlock genetic secrets for Aryan breeding, injecting dyes into eyes or sewing siblings together. Other SS doctors, like Karl Klauberg and Horst Schumann, performed sterilization experiments using X-rays and chemicals, causing excruciating pain and infertility to advance Nazi eugenics on thousands of women at Block 10 in Auschwitz. The complicity extended beyond the SS. German companies like IG Farben profited from slave labor at Monowitz, building a plant that cost 35,000 lives and supplied Zyklon B, knowingly adapting it for human use by increasing potency. Railway workers drove the deportation trains, with Deutsche Reichsbahn billing the SS per kilometer. 3 Pfennig for children, 4 for adults, in detailed ledgers. Local collaborators across Europe aided in roundups. In Slovakia, the Hlinka Guard deported 70,000 Jews under Josef Tisso's regime, a Catholic priest who justified it as national purification. In the Netherlands, Dutch police assisted in arrests, leading to 107,000 deportations with only 5,000 survivors through efficient civil registries. The final solution thrived on a web of complicity, fueled by ideology, fear, and indifference. Psychologically, perpetrators were conditioned to see their actions as normal. Propaganda dehumanized Jews, making their execution seem necessary for national survival. The bureaucratic structure diffused responsibility. Eichmann organized transports, Höss managed camps, and guards followed orders, each claiming they were just a small part. Milgram's obedience experiments, conducted post-war at Yale in 1961, showed how people obey authority even when asked to harm others, with 65% administering what they believed were lethal shocks under instruction. For many, fear of punishment or career ruin ensured compliance, as dissenters like Kurt Gerstein, an SS officer who tried to alert the Allies and Vatican about gassings in 1942, were rare and often ignored or disbelieved. Others, steeped in Nazi ideology from youth groups like Hitler Youth, believed they were serving a higher cause, indoctrinated through camps and rallies glorifying racial purity. As Hannah Arendt observed in her coverage of Eichmann's trial for The New Yorker, the banality of evil lay in how ordinary people, following routines and paperwork, enabled extraordinary crimes without apparent remorse, turning genocide into an administrative task. January the 27th, 1945, Soviet troops liberated Auschwitz, revealing a landscape of unimaginable horror. Starving survivors, heaps of stolen belongings like 7,000 kilograms of human hair, and the ruins of crematoria the Nazis tried to dynamite to erase evidence. The final solution had ended, but its legacy endures. 6 million Jews, 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population, were executed alongside millions of others, including 1.5 million children. Entire communities vanished, their synagogues, schools, and cultures reduced to memory, with Yiddish-speaking shtetls wiped from maps. Yet the survivors ensured those memories would not fade. Through testimonies, memoirs, and memorials, they preserved the truth. The Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum, established in 1947 on the site, stands as a monument to the victims and a warning to the world. Declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1979, it draws millions annually to confront this history, displaying artifacts like suitcases inscribed with names of the doomed. Since 2005, January 27th has been International Holocaust Remembrance Day, a global call to honor the dead and fight hatred, observed with ceremonies at the United Nations and beyond. The final solution began with words, propaganda that dehumanized, laws that excluded, and silence that enabled. As Deborah Lipstadt warned in her book Denying the Holocaust was a process, not an event. It grew from small acts of prejudice to genocide. This history demands we stay vigilant. Antisemitism and intolerance persist, often in subtle forms like online conspiracy theories or political rhetoric echoing old tropes. Primo Levi's words haunt us. It happened, therefore it can happen again. It can happen anywhere. But alongside this warning lies hope, in the resistance of those who fought back, the compassion of those who helped, like Raoul Wallenberg, who saved 100,000 Hungarian Jews with protective passports, and the survivors who rebuilt lives and communities in Israel and diaspora. What does the final solution teach us about the power of words to incite or heal? How can we recognize the early signs of hatred before they grow? And what can we do today to ensure never again becomes reality? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear how this story resonates with you. If this story inspired you, challenged you, or made you see World War II in a new light, we'd be honored to have you as part of our growing community. Subscribing isn't just a click. It's a way to support more powerful stories, more forgotten voices, and more truth from the past. And don't forget to leave a comment. We read them all and love hearing your thoughts. Until next time, keep exploring history with Epic War. Keep asking questions, keep seeking the truth,